Baseball is everywhere right now. And for fans of the Toronto Blue Jays, this is one of those moments in the year when it feels like the sport completely takes over the daily routine. You turn on the television, open your phone, check highlights online, and there's always another game happening somewhere. Between spring training matchups and the intensity of the World Baseball Classic, the amount of baseball available to watch right now is almost overwhelming in the best possible way. For anyone who follows the Blue Jays closely, this stretch has been especially interesting because even though the results in the standings during spring training are not always the main focus, there have been several performances that are turning heads. The Blue Jays have not exactly been dominating the win column in every exhibition game, but that does not mean there is nothing to be excited about. In fact, the past few days delivered a number of positive signs that fans have been waiting to see. The most important part of this time of the year is evaluating players, seeing how the roster is shaping up, and figuring out which guys are starting to build momentum before the regular season begins. And this past weekend offered plenty of moments where you could feel that energy starting to build. At the same time, the World Baseball Classic has added an entirely different level of excitement for baseball fans around the world. The atmosphere in those games feels completely different from a normal exhibition matchup. Players represent their countries, emotions run high, and the crowds bring a playoff-like energy that is hard to replicate. Watching some of the biggest stars in the sport competing on that stage has been one of the most entertaining parts of the last few days. For example, seeing players like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. performing in that environment reminds everyone just how electric this tournament can be. When elite hitters step into the box with national pride on the line, every swing suddenly feels bigger. Fans are not just watching a baseball game. They're watching a battle between some of the most talented athletes in the sport, each one trying to make a statement on a global stage. Meanwhile, while the international spotlight shines on those games, the Blue Jays are continuing their own preparations in spring training. Several of the players expected to play key roles this season have been getting their reps in, and that includes some of the team's most important veterans. George Springer continues to look comfortable at the plate, and the coaching staff is clearly using these games as an opportunity to fine-tune the roster before opening day arrives. What makes this period especially fun is the sheer volume of baseball happening at the same time. Over the course of just a few days, fans could watch multiple Blue Jays games along with international matchups featuring Team Canada and other countries. It creates a schedule where there is almost always something happening on the field. For a sport that spends months building toward its biggest moments, these weeks feel like a festival of baseball. And despite the casual nature that sometimes surrounds spring training, winning still matters to the players in the clubhouse. No team wants to get used to losing, even in exhibition games. So when the Blue Jays were able to pick up victories during the weekend, it brought a sense of rhythm back to the team. Those wins may not count in the standings once the season begins, but they still help establish confidence and momentum. Pitching, in particular, was one of the areas where the Blue Jays delivered some encouraging performances. Several starters stepped onto the mound and showed flashes of what the rotation might look like once the regular season begins. For fans who have been wondering how strong this pitching staff could be, these outings offered a glimpse of the potential that exists within the group. One of the most eye-catching performances came from Max Scherzer, who looked remarkably sharp during his appearance. It is still early in the spring, and many pitchers are usually focused more on building their arm strength than dominating hitters. But Scherzer looked like he was already locked in. His fastball velocity was stronger than many expected at this stage, and his command on the mound made it clear that he is preparing to play a major role in this rotation. Over the course of 4 innings, Scherzer managed to completely shut down the opposing lineup, allowing no runs and not even surrendering a hit. That kind of performance stands out in any setting, but it becomes even more impressive when you remember that pitchers are still ramping up their workloads during spring training. Whether it is against everyday major league hitters or a lineup filled with players still fighting for roster spots, throwing 4 innings of no-hit baseball is something that demands attention. Of course, Scherzer was not the only pitcher delivering strong outings. Kevin Gausman also took the mound and showed why he continues to be one of the most reliable arms in the Blue Jays rotation. While his velocity might not have been at its absolute peak yet, the results were exactly what the team wanted to see. He limited the opposing lineup to just a handful of hits while keeping runs off the board and collecting several strikeouts along the way. Cody Poteet also added to the impressive weekend for Toronto's pitching staff. During his appearance, he managed to deliver 3 innings without allowing a single hit. Performances like that may happen quietly during spring training, but for a team evaluating depth within the rotation, they are incredibly valuable. When multiple pitchers begin to show signs of effectiveness at the same time, it creates the kind of competition that every organization hopes to have. And that is where things start to become complicated in the best possible way for the Blue Jays. When several pitchers are performing well at the same time, the coaching staff suddenly has to make difficult decisions about how the rotation will ultimately look. It is a situation that teams would rather have than the alternative, but it still requires careful planning. The more these pitchers continue to perform, the harder those decisions become. Every outing adds new information, every inning builds momentum, and every strong performance forces the organization to reconsider how the roster should be constructed once the regular season begins. Spring training often answers questions, but sometimes it also creates new ones, especially when players exceed expectations early on. As the pitching storylines continued to develop, another name that quietly began drawing attention was Jose Berrios. His outing might not have been the flashiest performance of the weekend, but it was one that many observers were watching closely. Over the course of 4 innings, Berrios allowed a handful of hits and gave up 2 earned runs, which on paper may not immediately jump off the page. But the real focus was on how he looked on the mound, particularly with his velocity and command. For Berrios, the conversation has never been only about results in a single spring training start. The bigger question revolves around consistency. Over the last season, there were stretches where he looked like the dependable arm the Blue Jays expected when they brought him in, but there were also moments where things seemed to unravel quickly. Because of that, every appearance he makes this spring is being analyzed carefully by fans who want to see clear signs that he is trending in the right direction. One of the encouraging details from his latest start was the speed of his sinker. Instead of sitting in the lower range that caused concern in the past, the pitch was hovering closer to 94 miles per hour. That difference might sound small, but for a pitcher whose style relies on movement and inducing contact, those few extra miles per hour can change everything. When Berrios is throwing with that kind of velocity, hitters have far less time to react, and the effectiveness of his entire pitch mix improves. Unlike some pitchers who dominate by piling up strikeouts, Berrios has always been a contact-oriented arm. His success comes from forcing hitters to put the ball in play under uncomfortable conditions. That approach can work extremely well when his command is as sharp and his pitches have life. But it also means he needs to stay ahead in counts and avoid leaving the ball in dangerous locations. The last couple of outings have suggested that he might be rediscovering that rhythm. What matters most right now is the trajectory. Spring training is not about perfection, especially for experienced starters who are simply trying to build toward the regular season. The fact that Berrios has shown improvement from one start to the next is exactly what the Blue Jays coaching staff wants to see. Each inning provides another opportunity to refine mechanics, regain confidence, and establish a foundation for the long schedule ahead. The situation becomes even more intriguing when you look at the overall depth of Toronto's rotation. With multiple pitchers delivering solid performances early in camp, the team finds itself facing a situation that is both exciting and complicated. On one hand, having several reliable arms competing for spots is the ideal scenario for any contender. On the other hand, it creates difficult decisions for the front office and coaching staff as they try to determine how everything fits together once the season begins. If everyone continues to pitch well, the organization may have to consider different ways to manage workloads or adjust roles throughout the year. Injuries, fatigue, and performance fluctuations are inevitable over a long season, which means having extra depth could ultimately become one of the team's biggest strengths. But at this moment, the puzzle pieces are still moving, and every new outing adds another layer to the conversation. Another reminder of how quickly narratives can shift in baseball came from looking back at discussions from just a year ago. At that time, opinions about certain players were drastically different from what they are today. A single season, or even a rough stretch of games, can dramatically change how fans and analysts view a player's future. Baseball has a way of rewriting its own storylines faster than almost any other sport. One example, often brought up in those conversations, involves Bo Bichette. There was a period not long ago when criticism surrounding his performance started to grow louder. Some people began questioning whether he could return to his elite form, even though his track record suggested otherwise. But as time passed and his play rebounded, the narrative shifted once again, reminding everyone how unpredictable the sport can be. That same perspective applies to pitchers like Berrios. A challenging stretch does not necessarily define an entire career, especially for a player with years of high-level experience. The difference between a disappointing season and a strong one can sometimes come down to small adjustments, a return of confidence, or simply better health. Because of that, many within the Blue Jays community are watching his progress this spring with cautious optimism. Beyond the pitching developments, attention has also started to turn toward the offensive side of the roster. Spring training games provide an opportunity for hitters to experiment, adjust timing, and test new approaches at the plate. While some veterans focus mainly on building rhythm, younger players often see these games as their chance to prove they belong at the highest level. That mix of established stars and emerging talent creates a fascinating dynamic during this stage of the preseason. Coaches evaluate not only individual statistics, but also the overall quality of at-bats, situational awareness, and defensive versatility. Sometimes the most important takeaway from a game is not a home run or a highlight play, but a small adjustment that shows a player is learning and evolving. At the same time, the energy surrounding the World Baseball Classic continues to resonate throughout the baseball world. Players returning from those international matchups bring stories about intense crowds, emotional moments, and the pride that comes with representing their countries. Even for teammates watching from afar, those experiences can add another layer of excitement to the start of the season. For Team Canada, the tournament has already delivered some memorable moments. The players stepped onto the field with visible enthusiasm, eager to compete on a global stage that does not come around very often. That level of passion is something that fans immediately connect with, and it reflects how meaningful the event has become for the athletes involved. Early in the competition, Canada managed to secure an important victory against Colombia, setting a positive tone for the games that followed. The atmosphere around that matchup captured the spirit of international baseball, where every run feels amplified and every inning carries extra weight. Even small moments, like players rushing onto the field with excitement before the game officially began, showed how eager the team was to get started. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. The buzz around Los Angeles baseball refuses to slow down. While the city is already accustomed to blockbuster headlines and superstar rosters, a new rumor circulating through the league has fans of the Los Angeles Dodgers dreaming even bigger about what the future could look like. According to growing speculation within baseball circles, the Dodgers could be positioning themselves for another massive move ahead of the 2026 season, the potential arrival of superstar outfielder Juan Soto. While nothing has been officially confirmed, the mere possibility has ignited excitement across Southern California. Soto, widely considered one of the most gifted hitters of his generation, has built a reputation for plate discipline, power, and a flair for the dramatic. Ever since bursting onto the scene with the Washington Nationals and helping deliver a championship run in 2019 World Series, the Dominican slugger has carried superstar expectations wherever he plays. League insiders whisper that Los Angeles could emerge as a serious destination if Soto's long-term future becomes available in the market. The Dodgers' financial muscle, competitive culture, and track record of attracting elite talent make the scenario feel less like fantasy and more like a possibility that cannot be ignored. Inside Dodger circles, The idea of Soto wearing blue has already begun fueling conversation among fans and analysts alike. Pairing his bat with an already stacked lineup would instantly transform an already dangerous offense into one of the most feared in baseball. Of course, speculation is a familiar companion in Los Angeles. The organization has often been linked to the biggest names in the sport, and not every rumor becomes reality. Still, the Dodgers front office has never been shy about chasing generational talent when the opportunity arises. For now, the whispers remain just that, whispers. But in a city where baseball dreams tend to grow quickly, the thought of Juan Soto stepping into the batter's box at Dodger Stadium has already captured imaginations. If the rumor gains traction, the excitement in Los Angeles could soon reach another level entirely. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.